Welcome to this online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. Our mission is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Kelly Anderson, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you are a newcomer or a visitor to our congregation, please let us know you're here by posting a comment on our live Facebook feed or YouTube feed, or by getting in touch with our membership director, Bethany Thornton, at sunnyhillmembership@gmail.com. We would love to let you know how you can connect with the congregation, or even during this time when our building is closed. Our opening words were written by Elizabeth Strong. Today, we celebrate a dream awakening. Today, we worship with renewed hope in our hearts. Today, we act on an audacity of hopes and dreams for the future. Today, we begin the hard work for justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations. For today is a day like no other, and it is ours to shape with vision and action. Let us worship together and celebrate a dream awakening. Welcome once again to Sunnyhill and this online worship service.
Join us in saying the word for lighting my chalice.
We light this chalice in memory of the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who have struggled for justice, and the love of those who have built beloved communities to carry on the light of hope.
Please rise in body and or spirit and join us in singing our hymn, I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
To the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
To the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way
To the freedom land.
to the freedom land.
I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. I asked my friend,
I asked my friend,
come and go with me.
come and go with me.
I asked my friend,
I asked my friend,
come and go with me.
come and go with me.
I asked my friend,
I asked my friend,
come and go with me.
come and go with me.
I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. If they won't go,
If they won't go,
I'll go anyhow.
I'll go anyhow.
If they won't go,
If they won't go,
I'll go anyhow.
I'll go anyhow.
If they won't go,
If they won't go,
I'll go anyhow.
I'll go anyhow.
I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. If you won't go,
If you won't go,
let your children go.
let your children go.
If you won't go,
If you won't go,
let your children go.
let your children go.
If you won't go,
If you won't go,
let your children go.
let your children go.
I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way.
I'm on my way,
And I won't turn back.
and I won't turn back.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way,
And I won't turn back.
and I won't turn back.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way,
And I won't turn back.
and I won't turn back.
I'm on my
Once upon a time, there was a drop of water named Higgins. Higgins was no ordinary drop of water. He was a drop with a dream. Higgins lived in a valley where it had not rained in a very, very long time. So all of the lovely green grass was turning brown. All the beautiful flowers were wilting, and all of the trees were starting to droop. Higgins had a dream that one day the valley would be a beautiful place again. But what could he do? After all, he was only a drop of water. One day, Higgins decided to travel and tell others about his dream. All the other drops listened very politely, but no one believed his dream would actually come true. "Higgins," said one of the drops, "get your head out of the clouds. You can't spend your whole life daydreaming." Higgins decided that he had to do something to make his dream come true. So he began to think and think and think some more. One day, as he was walking by a rusty bucket, he got an idea. If enough of us drops of water got together in this bucket, Higgins thought, there would be enough water to sprinkle on a few flowers to help them grow and become beautiful again. Eagerly, Higgins told everyone about his great idea. But everyone thought he was being foolish. "That Higgins is nothing but a dreamer," they said. Higgins decided he had to do something so that he could convince the others that he was right. He said to them, "I don't know about you, but I'm getting into that bucket. I hope some of you will join me. Then there might be enough water to help at least some of the flowers grow beautiful again." So Higgins ran as hard as he could, hopped way up into the air, and landed with a kerplunk right in the bottom of the bucket. And there he sat, just a drop in the bottom of that bucket. For a long time, Higgins was very lonely. It seemed like no one was going to join him. But after a while, some of the other drops could see that the grass was dying, and the flowers were wilting, and the trees were drooping. They all agreed that something must be done. Suddenly, one drop shouted, "I'm going to go in that bucket with Higgins." And he leapt through the air, and he landed right at the bottom of the bucket. Then two drops yelled, "Wait for us!" And they hopped through the air and landed right in the bottom of the bucket. Then 10 drops jumped through the air, then 30, and then 50, and then hundreds of drops came from all around just to hop into the bucket. Soon, the bucket was completely full of water, but there were still drops that wanted to join, so they found another bucket, and they hopped in. Before long, there were 2 buckets of water, then 3, then 4, then 10, and then hundreds, and then thousands of buckets of water. Along came a powerful breeze that blew over all of the buckets, and all of the water flowed together to make a mighty stream. Everywhere the water flowed, the grass turned green once again, and the flowers bloomed, and the trees stood tall and straight once more. All this happened because Higgins had a dream, and his dream came true. Because he knew that although he was just a drop in the bucket, enough drops in the bucket make a bucket full. And when there are enough buckets with the wind behind them, then justice will roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream.
This is the time in our service when we share joys and sorrows that have been submitted by members of the congregation, so that both the things we are celebrating and the things that we are grieving need not be held by one person or one family alone. Our joys and sorrows, as you may have noticed, have been flagging a bit in terms of submissions recently, although I'm sure that everyone out there is experiencing some kind of joy or sorrow, however large or small it might be during this challenging time. I encourage you to submit your joys and sorrows as it is an important way to stay connected with one another, especially during this time when our building remains closed. I have just a few joys and sorrows to share with you this morning. After each one that I share, please respond by saying with me, "We hold you in our hearts." A sorrow for all who are in school or have school-aged children. Recent weeks have been challenging for families deciding how best to educate their children if they've been given a choice of in-person or home-based learning or some hybrid of the two. As we move into the school year, there continue to be difficult decisions, challenging transitions, and ever-changing circumstances. For all who are involved in these challenging situations, parents, students, teachers, school administrators, and others, we hold you in our hearts. A sorrow submitted on behalf of Amy Gloy, as we announced a couple of weeks ago. Amy has been diagnosed with throat cancer. She'll be having surgery this Wednesday, September 9th, and the recovery after the surgery will be lengthy and challenging for both Amy and her family. They would certainly appreciate all your good thoughts and support. To Amy and the Gloy family, we hold you in our hearts. A sorrow from Kelly Anderson. Kelly says, "My friend and colleague has been helping his wife battle brain cancer for the last 5 years. On Friday, she had to be moved to hospice care. Please send love and light out to Rob, Megan, and their 3 young girls during this difficult time. To Rob, Megan, family, and friends, we hold you in our hearts." Let us bear in mind all of these sorrows as well as those joys and sorrows held too closely to be shared today. Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. While the heat of summer may not yet be done with us, we have already turned to fall and new beginnings. Let us pause this Labor Day weekend to consider the work that is before us, the work of our careers and schools and homes, the work of our hands and hearts and minds, the work of our church, the work of nourishing, the work of surviving, the work of thriving. Let us bring to all this work a sense of purpose that stretches farther than just the items on our never-ending to-do lists. Let us bring a sense of longing that is about more than simply longing for the end of the day. Let us bring a sense of gratitude that encompasses not just the end of the workday, but the fact that we have work to do at all. Let us pause for a moment, whether we are employed or not, retired or not, to consider what work lies ahead of us. In the weeks and months to come, may we bring our best selves to all the work we do. May we love the work we do. And may we help improve the lives of all who labor. Amen. The song Mary and I are about to sing is about the Aragon Mill, which was a textile mill that operated continuously from 1898 until it shut down in 1970, leaving pretty much the entire town of Aragon, Georgia, unemployed. We sing this song on this Labor Day weekend to remember all those people in this country and around the world who have found themselves without a livelihood as a result of corporate globalization, automation, and greed, or as a result of the current pandemic.
At the east end of town, at the foot of the hill, there's a chimney so tall that says Aragon Mill. For there's no smoke at all coming out of the stack, or the mill has shut down and it ain't a-coming back. And the only tune I hear is the sound of the wind as it blows through the town. Weave and spin, weave and spin. There's no children at all in the narrow empty street. All the looms have shut down. It's so quiet I can't sleep. And the only tune I hear is the sound of the wind as it blows through the town. Weave and spin, weave and spin. I'm too old to work, and I'm too young to die, and there's no place to go for my woman and I. 'Cause the mill has shut down, it's the only life I know. Tell me, where will I go? Tell me, where will I go? And the only tune I hear is the sound of the wind as it blows through the town. Weave and spin, weave and spin. And the only tune I hear is the sound of the wind as it blows through the town. Weave and spin, weave and spin.
In my family of origin, Labor Day had real meaning and wasn't just a weekend for enjoying sales at the mall and backyard barbecues. My maternal grandfather, Grandpa Thompson, as we called him in my family, worked the second shift at the steel mill in New Boston, Ohio, for some 30 years. Having come of age during the Great Depression, he understood the value of a good job and the value of being a member of a strong labor union. Some of my earliest memories include listening to my grandpa play the banjo and sing some of the old union songs, a couple of which we're singing during the service this morning. I loved these songs because they seemed to represent a kind of David and Goliath battle in which the little guy really did have a chance to win as long as he stuck together with the other little guys to get the job done. My grandpa grew up in eastern Kentucky, where at that time your only career choices were subsistence farming, trying to eke out a living and grow crops among the hills and hollers of the Appalachian Mountains, or coal mining. There was no high school in the community where my grandparents grew up, so 8th grade was as far as you could go. And college was not a realistic possibility for much of anyone who lived there. When he was 18, my grandfather got a job working in a nearby coal mine. He lasted exactly one day. He just couldn't stand being underground in the narrow darkness of the mine shafts. So his mining career was short-lived. A few years later, after my grandparents were married, they moved to southern Ohio, where Grandpa found work at the steel mill and where Grandma raised 6 children, all of whom went on to earn master's degrees and were public school educators. None of this success would have been possible without the job at the steel mill. And the job at the steel mill paid a living wage only because of the work of the union. So as I said, Labor Day really means something in my family. For my mother and her 5 brothers, it meant that they were given a chance at an education and careers that they would not have had otherwise. In fact, my mother herself was a member of the teachers' union and marched on the picket line when she had to in order to fight for decent wages for herself and other teachers. One of the earliest lessons I learned was that you never cross a picket line. And there were some pretty ugly terms for people who crossed the picket line to work for the company in place of the striking workers. It was my grandpa who taught me the difference between scabs and yellow dogs. Scabs are workers who cross the picket line to work during a strike. Yellow dogs, as I understand it, are workers who agree not to join a union as a condition of their employment. The power of the union depended on everyone sticking together and presenting a unified front. Otherwise, the bosses would win and the workers would all suffer as a result. I wrote the song that we're about to sing, Leaving Kentucky, in honor of my grandma and grandpa Thompson, who continue to have a great influence on my life.
Way back in Kentucky in 1930, the Hoover Depression was bearing down bad, with No place to work but those dank, deadly coal mines. Folks turn to Ohio where there's jobs to be had. It's either the hole or Ohio, my friend. There's no other way to get by. You can go down the coal mines and pray you don't die, or cross the river to the promised land, or across the river to the promised land. The hills and the hollers of eastern Kentucky are sure enough pretty, they're a sight for sore eyes. If you can't manage to eke out a living, you must leave your home if you hope to survive. It's either the hole or Ohio, my friend. There's no other way to get by. You can go down the coal mine and pray you don't die, or cross the river to the promised land, or across the river to the promised land. Ohio's got good union jobs for the asking. The pay's pretty decent and conditions are good. It's still mighty hard just to leave the old home place where all your dear family has stayed and withstood. It's either the hole or Ohio, my friend. There's no other way to get by. You can go down the coal mines and pray you don't die, or cross the river to the promised land, or cross the river to the promised land.
The history of labor in America is sordid and bloody. It's a story of corruption on all sides. It's a story of greed and abuse. It's a story of often violent means used to justify morally questionable ends. Early in our nation's history, slave labor was responsible for our economic success. We like to think that only the South is tainted by the stain of slavery, but the fact is that every part of the country benefited. Southern plantation owners certainly, but also northern shipping magnates and mill owners and others. Not just the South, but the entire eastern seaboard and New England thrived economically, at least in part, because of slave labor. By the time the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and gradually put into force, a new engine was driving the American economy, the railroad industry. And it was during the rapid growth of American railroads that the American labor movement began to pick up speed. Railroad workers, especially laborers, were paid trifling amounts, sometimes just pennies a day, for back-breaking work, while the owners of the railroads were enjoying immense, almost obscene profits, which may sound familiar to you somehow. So the earliest, bloodiest labor conflicts that occurred took place around the railroads. Things came to a head here in Pittsburgh in 1877 when the Pennsylvania Railroad announced that they would begin implementing a practice called double heading, which meant joining two trains worth of cars into one train with two engines. Double heading reduced the number of jobs that were available, required more work from those who were left, and greatly increased the likelihood of accidents. On the same day, the railroad announced that it was doubling the number of miles that each railroad worker would have to work each day, which meant that they were discharging half of their workforce. All of this at a time when the railroad companies were enjoying ever-soaring profits. Strikes began here in Pittsburgh, and the strikes turned into riots. In the end, 39 buildings were burned to the ground, along with the destruction of more than 1,200 railroad cars and engines. More than 60 people were killed and more than 100 others were injured. Although the Pittsburgh Railway riots were tragic, historian John French has pointed out that they ended up strengthening the cause of organized labor, which had struggled for years to form coherent and effective political and social institutions. He quoted a leader of the Pittsburgh Knights of Labor as saying that the result of the riots was to solidify and organize the working people. The labor movement in America is responsible for bringing about humane working conditions for all workers and for many pieces of legislation that protect workers' rights. Some aspects of working life, including the 8-hour day and the 40-hour week and paid holidays, are a direct result of people who fought and died to win those rights. At the same time, it is true that labor unions have been subject to corruption and greed, just like any other human institution. And at times, the unions have seemed to be their own worst enemies, appearing to be more like petulant children than reasonable adults. However, the American middle class, as we know it, would probably never have come into being without the labor unions. Sadly, many of our workers today are feeling left behind and ill-treated by the government, by their former or current employers, and by the unions. For some of them, the after effects of hazardous and unhealthy working conditions have resulted in chronic poor health, and they find themselves without much in the way of support or resources. For my grandpa's generation, it was a matter of deciding which side you were on. Labor, which represented the best interest of American workers, or the companies, which clearly did not. Today, it's a time when it's harder to discern sometimes which side is which.
Come all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the good old Union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 My daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won. Which side are you on? 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 They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on? 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 Oh, workers, can you stand it? Oh, tell me how you can. Will you be a lousy scab or will you be a man? Which side are you on? 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 Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
The nature of labor in America has changed dramatically in the last few decades. The labor unions lost much of their strength starting in the early 1980s and continuing to the present day. We have moved from a manufacturing-based economy to a service-based economy. And globalization has forever altered, for better or worse, the way business is conducted. And the long-term consequences of the current pandemic make things even worse and even less predictable. The upshot of all of these sweeping changes is that the American worker is standing on very shaking and shifting ground. The 40-hour work week is now thought of as some quaint relic of the past. American workers are willing to sacrifice almost anything, it seems, just to have a job at all. The coal miners of yesteryear were being exploited by the mining companies and had to fight for a living wage and humane working conditions. But the people who live in mining country today would dearly love to see the mining industry bounce back to what it was so they could have jobs at all. During the last election cycle, as well as the current one, we see many of the people of West Virginia, for example, wanting so much to believe anyone who will tell them that they will return to the coal mining industry, that it will return to its former glory, even though it's clear that they're just being fed outright lies. I don't know what the future of labor in America will be like. I don't know what lies ahead for the American worker. But I do know that one of the things our country sorely needs is a sense of solidarity, a sense that what happens to someone else matters to me as well, that each of us has a responsibility to look out for the common good of all. If the bedrock of our Unitarian Universalist faith is that each person really does have inherent worth and dignity, then we need to look out for those who have been run over by recent massive changes in our economy. Sometimes in liberal circles, we tend to act mystified when we see working class people voting in a way that we believe is not in their own best interests, voting for candidates whom we are sure have no real interest in the welfare of American workers. but we need to understand the deep fear and anxiety and anger that people are experiencing. Solidarity in its truest, biggest sense means really listening and responding to the needs of others, not just offering a knee-jerk reaction or condescending chastisements. Solidarity means working alongside these others, knowing that our fates are inextricably linked to one another and that our very existence is threatened if we do not find ways of working together for the good of all. A living wage and humane working conditions are things that are worth fighting for. And it is a battle that needs to be fought, not just by those at the bottom end of the economic ladder, but by all of us who believe in justice and compassion. My hope and my prayer is that we will learn together what true solidarity is and how to practice it in our own time and place. May it be so. Amen. Please rise in body and or spirit and join us in singing, "We Shall Not Be Moved."
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our freedom. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our children. We shall not be moved. We're fighting for our children. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We're young and old together, we shall not be moved. We're young and old together, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
We'll now give and receive our morning offering, which will benefit the UU Disaster Relief Fund to provide aid in the wake of the recent storms and wildfires. The Disaster Relief Fund disperses grants to UU congregations and affiliated UU entities affected by natural disasters. Disaster relief grantees have reported feeling held in care and more connected to other UU congregations and to the UUA as a whole. If you'd like to make a donation via our online giving system, you can do so in one of two ways. You can go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the directions. Once you get to the drop-down menu, just choose either 2020 Pledge if you're paying on a pledge, or Designated Collections if you're giving to the UU Disaster Relief Fund. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. Just dial that number using your smartphone and follow the instructions. You can also mail a check the old-fashioned way, and you can find our mailing address on our website, sunnyhill.org. Thank you for your generosity.
Please join us in saying the words for extinguishing our chalice.
We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words were written by Sarah Lammert. Go in peace, embraced by the light and warmth of our gathering. Go in love, ready again to struggle on. Go in beauty, shining forth like a lamp for freedom. Go in peace.